The Omniseer had been right about everything for 10,000 years. Every battle, every strategy, every possible outcome calculated down to the movement of individual electrons in a ship's hull during atmospheric re-entry. It was the Galactic Council's most prized possession, their ultimate insurance policy against military disasters, and the source of Commander Vrex's incredibly inflated ego. Vrex stood in the observation deck, all four of his arms crossed in what he probably thought was an intimidating pose. His species, the Kaldorians, had won 14 consecutive galactic war games, and he never let anyone forget it. Today, he was practically vibrating with smug anticipation. Another species thinks they can pass the simulation, Vrex announced to his assistant, Lieutenant Crix, who was busy pretending to review data on his tablet. Humans, small, two-armed creatures from a backwater planet. This should take, 5 minutes? Crix, a nervous, three-eyed being who'd learned long ago that agreeing with Vrex made life easier, nodded enthusiastically. 5 minutes seems generous, sir. The Omniseer dominated the center of the chamber, a massive crystalline structure that hummed with enough processing power to simulate entire galaxies. It had tested 473 species for membership in the Galactic Defense Initiative. It had approved 32. The rest were politely informed that they were strategically incompatible with modern warfare, which was a diplomatic way of saying, "Your tactics are garbage, please stay home." The doors hissed open. Captain Jake Morrison strolled in wearing a flight jacket that had definitely seen better days, chewing what appeared to be some kind of earth plant matter, and looking around the room like he'd just walked into a particularly unimpressive shopping mall. "So this is the fancy computer, huh?" Jake said, tapping the Omniseer's exterior with his knuckle. "Does it run Doom?" Vrex's eye twitched. The Omniseer is the most advanced strategic calculation matrix in the known universe. It has predicted the outcome of every major conflict for 100 centuries. It does not run Doom. "Shame," Jake said, pulling out a chair and spinning it around to sit backwards on it. "So what? I just fight some fake battles and you guys decide if humans are cool enough to hang out with you. The simulation will present you with 3 combat scenarios of increasing difficulty," Vrex explained, his tone dripping with condescension. "Each scenario has been carefully crafted to test strategic thinking, tactical flexibility, and decision-making under pressure. The Omniseer will analyze your choices and determine your species' combat viability. I should mention that the final scenario has a 0.3% success rate. And if I fail, then humanity will be classified as strategically incompatible and barred from all military cooperation with Council species. You'll be on your own if anyone decides to invade Earth." Jake nodded slowly. "No pressure, then." "None whatsoever," Vrex said with a smile that showed too many teeth. "Shall we begin? I have a lunch reservation in 20 minutes. The simulation chamber lit up, projecting a 3-dimensional battlefield around Jake's chair. He was now apparently in command of a fleet defending a resource-rich planet against an invading force. Ships materialized in holographic blue and red, orbital structures gleamed in the simulated sunlight, and tactical data scrolled past faster than any human eye could reasonably track. The Omniseer's voice emerged from everywhere at once, smooth and artificial. Scenario 1, Planetary Siege Defense. The enemy fleet outnumbers yours 3-1. They will reach orbital bombardment range in 47 minutes. You have 3 primary strategic options. Please select your approach. 3 glowing panels appeared in front of Jake, each outlining a different defensive strategy. They all looked very official and very complicated. Jake raised his hand like a student in class. "Quick question, is there a 4th option?" Vrex actually laughed. "The Omniseer has calculated all 47 million possible approaches to this scenario. Those 3 represent the only viable paths to victory. There is no 4th option." "Right, but what if I wanted to do something else?" The Omniseer's hum changed pitch slightly, which Vrex had never heard before. "Please clarify your question. All strategic possibilities have been incorporated into the presented options." "Yeah, but what about the random stuff?" Jake leaned forward, squinting at the display. What if I just kind of winged it?" A 4th panel materialized, small and gray, in the corner of the display. It simply read, Random selection. Below it, in smaller text, system testing protocol, not for active use. Crix looked up from his tablet. Sir, I've never seen that option before. That's because no one has ever been stupid enough to ask for it, Vrex said, his smugness returning. Go ahead, human. Press the random button. Let's see how that works out for you. Jake pressed it. The omniseer made a sound like a computational cough. The battlefield shifted. Jake's fleet suddenly divided itself into seemingly random groups with no apparent coordination. 3 destroyers broke formation and headed directly into asteroid fields. His flagship began broadcasting surrender negotiations while simultaneously charging weapons. A supply ship started racing toward the enemy fleet alone, which was either incredibly brave or incredibly dumb. Vrex leaned forward, anticipation gleaming in his eyes. Watch carefully, Crix. This is what happens when you ignore calculated strategy. But then something weird happened. The enemy fleet, following perfectly logical tactical doctrine, moved to intercept the supply ship, assuming it was a trap. This pulled them away from their optimal attack vector. The destroyers in the asteroid field started using the rocks as cover for guerrilla strikes. The surrender broadcast confused the enemy's communication network just long enough for Jake's main fleet to reposition into a devastating crossfire. 42 minutes later, Jake won. Vrex's jaw hung open. All 4 of his arms had gone limp at his sides. Huh, Jake said. That worked out pretty well. That was a statistical anomaly, Vrex insisted, his voice climbing an octave. The omniseer, explain what just happened. The machine hummed thoughtfully. Calculating. The random distribution of forces created 17 unexpected variables that the enemy's logical response algorithms could not optimally process. The probability of success was approximately 9%, but within acceptable victory parameters. This outcome was unexpected. Unexpected, Crix repeated quietly. The omniseer just said something was unexpected. Shut up, Crix, Vrex snapped. Continue to Scenario 2. This was clearly a fluke. Scenario 2 materialized. A fleet engagement in open space. No terrain advantages. Pure tactical combat. The kind of battle where strategy mattered most, and luck mattered least. Vrex was practically rubbing his hands together. This scenario has been failed by 68% of test subjects, the omniseer announced. Victory requires precise resource management, timing, and formation discipline. Please select your approach. Jake didn't even look at the 3 tactical options. He just hammered the random button like it owed him money. What are you doing? Vrex shouted. Following my gut, Jake said cheerfully. The omniseer made that computational coughing sound again, louder this time. Jake's fleet began doing things that violated every principle of space combat doctrine. Ships attacked their own supply lines. The entire fleet surrendered, then immediately unsurrendered 30 seconds later, which apparently confused everyone, including Jake's own simulated officers. At one point, Jake's flagship broadcast a challenge for the enemy commander to settle things with a dance-off. This is absurd, Vrex said. The omniseer, terminate this farce and declare him failed. Negative, the omniseer replied, and its voice sounded strained. The scenario is still within active parameters. The human's actions, while illogical, continue to generate unpredictable cascade effects in the enemy's response matrix. I am attempting to calculate probability curves, but they keep shifting into configurations that should not exist. Jake's random tactics created absolute chaos. The enemy fleet, programmed to respond logically to threats, kept trying to adapt to strategies that made no sense. They'd move to counter a feint only to discover it wasn't a feint. They'd ignore what looked like a feint, only to get blindsided when it turned out to be a real attack. Jake's ships were doing things so unpredictable that the enemy's tactical AI essentially started having a nervous breakdown. Crix was no longer pretending to work. He was watching the battle unfold with something approaching religious awe. Sir, he's winning again. I can see that, Crix. The enemy fleet, thoroughly confused and out of position, was systematically dismantled by what could only be described as organized chaos. When the simulation ended with Jake's victory, Vrex had started sweating from all 4 armpits, which was apparently a thing Kaldorians could do. How? Vrex whispered. How is this possible? The Omniseer's hum had taken on an almost anxious quality. This unit is experiencing processing anomalies. The human's selection of random parameters is forcing calculation of probability matrices outside standard operational frameworks. Request clarification. Is human strategic doctrine based on intentional chaos generation? Jake shrugged. I mean, kind of. We mostly just try stuff and see what happens. Crix made a note on his tablet with trembling hands. He's breaking the Omniseer. He's not breaking anything, Vrex insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. One more scenario. The final test. No one beats the final test by pressing random buttons. The third scenario loaded and even Jake looked impressed. It was a nightmare situation, the kind of unwinnable scenario designed to test how commanders handled inevitable defeat. Outnumbered 10-1, surrounded, low on resources, no reinforcements, no terrain advantages, the Kobayashi Maru of space battles. This scenario has no winning solution, the Omniseer stated. It is designed to evaluate decision-making in no-win situations. 67 species have attempted it. 0 have succeeded. Please select your response to certain defeat. Jake looked at the three options. Honorable last stand, negotiate surrender, or attempt desperate retreat. Then he looked at the random button, which seemed to be glowing brighter now, almost beckoning. Don't you dare, Vrex said. Jake pressed random. Then he pressed it again, and again, and again. He pressed it so many times that smoke started coming from the holographic interface. The Omniseer made a sound like a digital scream. Stop, stop, stop. You are generating cascading random variables that compound exponentially. This unit cannot process infinite probability branches simultaneously. Can't you, though? Jake asked innocently. I thought you calculated everything. This unit calculates logical progressions based on rational actor theory. The Omniseer's voice was rising in pitch. You are not a rational actor. You are pressing random without even reviewing the outcomes. What if the enemy also acts randomly? What if all variables become random? What if nothing means anything anymore? Crix gasped. Is the Omniseer having an existential crisis? Apparently yes, Vrex said faintly. Sitting down for the first time since the test began, the battlefield had become complete pandemonium. Jake's forces were doing everything and nothing simultaneously. Ships warped randomly around the combat zone. Some were firing, some were retreating, some were broadcasting poetry on all frequencies. The enemy fleet, trying desperately to respond to this tactical insanity, had essentially frozen in confusion. Sir, Crix said quietly, I accessed the Omniseer's core assumptions. Its entire strategic framework is built on the premise that all intelligent beings act in logical self-interest during warfare. Well, obviously, Vrex said. That's how warfare works, Jake laughed. Have you met humans? We have a saying, hold my beer. It's what we say right before doing something monumentally stupid that somehow works out. Explain human military doctrine, the Omniseer demanded, sounding genuinely desperate. We don't really have one unified doctrine, Jake said thoughtfully. I mean, we've tried stuff like blitzkrieg, trench warfare, guerrilla tactics, shock and awe. Sometimes we charge machine guns on horseback. Sometimes we hide in wooden horses. One time we won a battle because emus were more persistent than we expected. Mostly we just kind of wing it and adapt on the fly. Vrex stared at Jake with all three of his primary eyes. You're telling me that humanity's military strategy is to have no consistent strategy? I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds bad. The Omniseer's hum had become erratic, almost panicked. This unit cannot function in an environment of pure chaos. Strategic calculation requires predictable parameters. Humans are not predictable. Humans are terrifying. In the simulation, Jake won by accident. His random movements had been so nonsensical that the enemy fleet's AI had crashed trying to find the pattern. Alarms started blaring throughout the facility. Apparently, when the Omniseer started questioning the nature of reality, people noticed. Within minutes, the observation deck was flooded with members of the Galactic Council, all demanding to know why the simulation had been running for 6 hours instead of the usual 45 minutes. Counselor Thane, a distinguished-looking being with more tentacles than seemed necessary, floated into the room radiating authority. Commander Vrex, explain this unprecedented delay. Vrex gestured helplessly at Jake. The human keeps pressing random. And the Omniseer can't handle it. Thane's tentacles froze mid-wave. In 10,000 years of Council history, no one had ever said the Omniseer couldn't handle something. Impossible. Authorize final protocol, ultimate scenario. If the human passes, we grant provisional membership. If he fails, we end this now. The Omniseer's voice crackled through the speakers, noticeably less confident than before. Loading ultimate scenario. Warning, this unit requests that the human not press random. Please, this unit is begging you. Can computers beg? Crix whispered. They can now, apparently, Vrex muttered. The ultimate scenario materialized, and it was genuinely impossible. Defend a critical outpost against an overwhelming force with minimal resources, limited ammunition, and absolutely no hope of victory through conventional means. Every Council species that had reached this point had failed. Most had failed within 15 minutes. Jake studied the 3 tactical options presented to him. For the first time all day, he actually seemed to be thinking about conventional strategy. His hand hovered over the panel, displaying a desperate defensive formation that might buy some time. The Omniseer hummed hopefully. Excellent. Logical analysis. This unit appreciates rational decision-making. Then Jake's hand moved to the random button. No! The Omniseer screamed, which machines weren't supposed to be able to do. Please, this unit cannot process another chaos cascade. Choose literally any other option. This unit will accept defeat. This unit will approve humanity. Just don't press random. Jake pressed random. The resulting strategy was so completely nonsensical that it achieved a kind of tactical enlightenment. Jake's forces retreated directly toward the enemy. Medical ships were deployed as frontline decoys. The outpost broadcast surrender on all frequencies while simultaneously launching every weapon it had. Supply convoys split up and started flying in figure eights for no apparent reason. One ship began transmitting what appeared to be Earth cooking shows. The enemy fleet, programmed with the most advanced tactical AI in the galaxy, completely froze. It couldn't process the contradictions. Retreat toward us? Medical ships attacking? Surrendering while shooting? What were the cooking shows about? The enemy AI tried to find the pattern, tried to understand the strategy, tried to predict the next move. There was no pattern. There was no strategy. There was no next predictable move. The enemy fleet essentially had a collective stroke and stopped functioning. Jake won by creating a tactical paradox so profound that it broke the rules of engagement. The Omniseer displayed a message across every screen in the facility. Error. Reality. XE has stopped working. Rebooting. Please stand by. This unit needs a moment. The greatest strategic computer in galactic history had crashed because a human kept pressing random. The observation deck was silent except for the Omniseer's cooling fans working overtime. Counselor Thane's tentacles had tied themselves in knots. Crix was frantically taking notes. Vrex looked like he'd aged a decade in 6 hours. Finally, Vrex spoke. Fine, he passed. Technically, but I move that we deny humanity's application to the Galactic Defense Initiative anyway. On what grounds? Thane asked. On the grounds that they're absolutely terrifying and I don't want them anywhere near actual warfare, Vrex said, all forearms gesturing frantically. Did you see what just happened? He broke the Omniseer by being unpredictable. Imagine what happens when millions of humans start doing that in real battles. Imagine trying to fight alongside them. We'd never know what they're going to do next because they do not know what they're going to do next. Jake raised his hand. Can I say something in our defense? Please don't, Vrex begged. I'm going to anyway. Look, I actually understood strategy the entire time. I've studied every major Earth military campaign from ancient warfare to modern space combat theory. I know what I'm doing. Then why did you keep pressing random? Crix asked. Because I realized something about 5 minutes into the first scenario. The Omnisphere is incredibly smart, maybe the smartest AI ever built, but it has one fundamental weakness. It assumes everyone else is predictable. It calculates based on logical responses to logical situations. But you know what you can't calculate? Jake stood up and walked over to the rebooting Omnisphere, placing his hand on its crystalline surface. Chaos. True randomness. The willingness to do something completely stupid that might somehow work. That's not a bug in human thinking. That's our greatest military asset. We've survived everything from saber-toothed cats to world wars because we're adaptable enough to try anything. Counselor Thane's tentacles unknotted themselves thoughtfully. This is an interesting perspective. It's a terrifying perspective, Vrex corrected, which is exactly why we should keep them out of the initiative. Crix, surprising everyone including himself, spoke up. Actually, sir, what if we did the opposite? What if humanity taught a course on unpredictable warfare? Every species in the initiative uses the Omnisphere for training. We all think the same way now. Logically, predictably. If we ever face an enemy that doesn't think like us, we'd be in trouble. You want humans to teach our military officers to be random? Vrex said incredulously. I want humans to teach our military officers to think outside calculated parameters, Crix corrected. There's a difference between randomness and adaptive creativity. The Omnisphere suddenly rebooted, its voice returning but noticeably different, almost cautious. This unit has completed diagnostic analysis. Conclusion: humans represent a statistical anomaly that cannot be effectively modeled using traditional frameworks. Recommendation: approve humanity for Galactic Defense Initiative membership. Secondary recommendation: never allow humans direct access to this unit again. Tertiary recommendation: this unit requires a vacation. Computers don't take vacations, Vrex said weakly. This computer does now, the Omnisphere replied. After 2 hours of debate, which Jake spent napping in his chair, the Galactic Council voted to grant humanity provisional membership in the initiative. The terms included mandatory strategy courses, shared defense protocols, and a very specific clause that Captain Jake Morrison was permanently banned from operating the Omnisphere. Jake shook hands with Counselor Thane, or rather shook one of his tentacles. Pleasure doing business with you. Where's the cafeteria? I'm starving. Down the hall, third door on the left, Crix said helpfully. They have 17 different cuisines from across the galaxy. Nice. Think I'll order something random and see what happens. Behind them, Vrex made a sound like a dying animal and collapsed into a chair. All 4 of his arms were twitching. As Jake left the observation deck whistling a tune that sounded suspiciously like Earth's "We Are the Champions," Crix turned to his commander. Sir, I think we just discovered something important. The most advanced civilization in the galaxy can calculate everything except the one thing that actually matters in war. And what's that? Vrex asked tiredly. That sometimes the best strategy is having no strategy at all. Vrex groaned. I'm putting in for a transfer. In the center of the room, the Omnisphere displayed a final message before going into low-power mode. System update. Installed new warning label. Human-compatible chaos theory now recognized as valid tactical framework. This unit will never be the same. Send help. And somewhere in the cafeteria, Captain Jake Morrison ordered a random combination of alien foods that absolutely should not work together, but somehow tasted amazing, because of course it did. The galaxy would never be quite the same, and honestly, it probably needed the shakeup. Humanity had arrived, and they brought chaos with them. The good kind of chaos. Probably. Hopefully. Time would tell, but one thing was certain. No one would ever underestimate the tactical value of pure, beautiful, unpredictable randomness again.